we go. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Before we do get started, I would like to let everybody know that we are recording today's session. My name is Mary, and I am one of your hosts tonight for today's webinar. I am an AARP New Hampshire lead volunteer. With me today is AARP New Hampshire staff Ashley Davis, and Ashley will be monitoring the chat. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in. The chat box is at the bottom of your screen. At AARP New Hampshire, we do focus on the health, the financial security, and the social connections that are critical to the well-being of the 50 plus in the Granite State. We carry out our work through targeted advocacy at the state and the federal levels, compelling engagements for the 50 plus community statewide, and we serve as a trusted resource for information for our members and the public. Our presentation tonight is part of a series that we're calling the Caregiver Compass. AARP has many resources for caregivers. We work hard to advocate for caregivers and provide them the support whenever we can. Tonight, we are working with Kristen Ebert to help you develop skills for wellness. Our present Kristen, she, her, hers, has worked with families for over 20 years, focusing on behavioral health and wellness. Kristen has a master's in education in counseling and a BA in interpersonal and relational communications. We're thankful she's joining us tonight to share her strategies and encourage wellness for all. Thank you for supporting caregivers. We are grateful for your time and your expertise tonight, Kristen, and I will hand the show over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, and thanks for having me. Um, if you're not familiar with University of New Hampshire's extension programs, we have offices throughout the 10 counties in New Hampshire. We offer services and support throughout within the community for anything ranging from agricultural specialties to my focus, which is health and well-being. And while my title is Youth Health, Behavioral Health and Wellness, I focus on caregivers, parents and caregivers, because they're at the nexus of youth behavioral health. So thank you for having me, and I encourage you to all check out Extension's website and review just the resources that are available statewide as well as specific to your county. So I'm gonna go over a few things with all of you tonight. We're gonna first look at how stress impacts us, impacts our body and our behavior. And then we're gonna look at common stress management strategies and mindful strategies as well as mindful reminders, because we hear self-care, 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 but what does that really look like in practice? So a first strategy that one of my areas that I've really focused my work on, as well as my research, is on mindfulness. And specifically, my field is like nature-based mindfulness, but a great technique, if you're not familiar, is called box breathing. So we're going to just take a minute. If you would feel more comfortable practicing it with your camera off. If your camera isn't off, I can't see all of you, but I'm sure you're all there and beautiful. But feel free to turn that off, and just box breathing is a nice, simple visualization to control breathing, especially in moments when we're feeling panicked or rushed, overwhelmed. So you can even use your finger to trace it. So you breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, you can go with the timer. And then breathe out. So the idea is to be able to breathe in, hold it, breathe out, hold. So take a couple of minutes. Actually, we'll do a minute. And just do that on your own. Try and find a rhythm with your breath. So just give you a really brief introduction into box breathing. We always say breathe, and I'm sure we've told our loved ones and friends, just breathe when you feel overwhelmed. But really, it's a tough thing to do when, as we'll talk about in a moment here, when you're in a heightened state. But this is a really great way to engage both mind, body. So stress, starting with that, we all have it. This time of year tends to bring it out. Even if we tend to not be prone to it, it can bring it out of the woodwork. There are a lot of triggers this time of year, and I don't like to use that word lightly, but especially around the holidays for a number of reasons, especially financial. You could have experienced loss, and a lot of that culminates around this time of year. So, stress, we're going to talk about how it affects the brain and how your body responds, and how there's both positive and negative stress. And someone who can do it way better than I can is Dr. Robert Sapolsky. He's a neuroscientist out of Stanford. So, I just have a short 3-minute video. I apologize, there's some flickering lights at first here, some weird sound. Can everyone hear that?
Back to a term I guarantee you had in ninth grade biology. With any luck, you have not thought about this word since then. Do you remember homeostasis? Homeostasis, having an ideal body temperature, an ideal level of glucose in the bloodstream, having an ideal everything, being in homeostatic balance. A stressor is anything in the outside world that knocks you out of homeostatic balance. You're some zebra and a lion has leapt out and ripped your stomach open and your innards are dragging in the dust and you still need to get out of there. This counts as being out of homeostatic balance. Or you're that lion who's half starved to death, and if you don't manage to chase something down to eat, you're not going to survive the night, a short-term physical crisis. And the stress response is what you do with your body. You secrete adrenaline and 11 other hormones I won't torture you with. The stress response reestablishes homeostatic balance. That's all you need to know about the subject if you're a zebra or a lion. If you're human, though, you've got to expand the definition in a very critical way, which is, among us, some of the time we turn on the stress response because we've had a challenge to homeostatic balance, all of that sort of thing. But some of the time we turn on the stress response because we think we're just about to be stressed. And if it turns out that you're right, hooray for you, here comes the elephant. You don't have to wait to be stomped by it before increasing your blood pressure. You can have an anticipatory stress response, which is great. On the other hand, if you think that way all the time and you're constantly assuming that there are stressors coming that do not really exist, we have technical terms for you. You're being neurotic as hell. You're being anxious, you're being paranoid, you're being hostile, you are being profoundly human. Sit down a hippo and try to describe what the prime lending rate is, and it's going to have no idea what you're talking about. But we do. And that's the central concept in the whole field. We cognitively, socially sophisticated primates turn on the exact same stress response as does that zebra running for its life or a lion running for a meal, and we turn it on for purely psychological reasons. We turn it on with memories, with emotions, with thoughts, and the whole punchline is that's not what it evolved for. What stress is like for 99% of the beasts on this planet is 3 minutes of screaming terror in the savannah, after which it's either over with or you're over with. And what do? We turn on the identical stress response for 30-year mortgages. And that's where you begin to get the wear and tear in the system.
Great. Oh, I don't know what's going on. Get out of here. All right. Let me see if I can. Nope. Nope. That's weird. All right, give me 1 second here. My apologies. I don't know why this isn't letting me get out of here. Oh, there we go. Okay. Apologies about that. So, as Dr. Sapolsky shared with you, and I don't know if any of that resonated. Like I said, this time of year, I feel like I'm kind of operating from a heightened state a lot of the time. And what that looks like neurologically, if you're familiar with some somewhat basic brain 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 function is your amygdala is like your control center for anything from creativity to control to logical thinking. And when we're operating in that heightened state, basically your amygdala is hijacked. So you lose reason, you lose logic, you lose creativity for problem solving, and you're operating, like he said, like that zebra in the Sahara. You're operating as if. We call that as if thinking or what if thinking. What if this happens? What if this happens? So when you operate from that part of your brain, you're not making the best decisions. You're maybe not putting your best presentation forward for your loved ones. You can just ask my kids about that most recently. So that's a little bit of that neuroscience behind what's actually happening on a chemical level when you are operating from a place of stress. Now, we could probably all identify and certainly, I'm a big sharer, so by all means, I apologize because I'm not good at multitasking. We'll talk about that later. Looking at the chat, but please feel free. I'm a believer in community and being able to normalize, and through that normalization within your community, it validates our own experiences, and then we feel a little less alone, even if it's something as simple as someone putting something in their chat, and you're like, oh my gosh, they feel that too. So when we look at the way stress affects our body, you can have anything from headaches. I love this infographic. I love a good infographic. It's right up there with LogoWare, as we were discussing before. So, but we can have anything from short term all the way to long term. So short term are some of those more in the moment experiences that you have physiologically. So you can have a shortness of breath. And please feel free to share any that maybe aren't outlined in here that you've experienced if you're willing. I am a big challenge by choice. By all means, you do not have to share, but you can have skin sensitivities, muscle tension. If you've ever noticed, just when you're taking a moment to step back, you notice that your shoulders are up here and you're like, how did that happen? So even just kind of releasing some of that. And if we hold on to that stress on a physiological level, there are long-term implications. So anything from migraines all the way to like cardiovascular issues to fertility, or fertility issues if you're a female trying to conceive. It really has a profound effect on our body. And one thing when I worked a lot with youth, because I like to work from a cognitive behavioral lens. If you've ever heard anyone say CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, I would always ask them, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? And how are you behaving? So if it were up to me, like I said, I love a good visual, but I would kind of put thoughts and feelings before body. But regardless, what are your thoughts that you're having? And the thought could be that person didn't meet that deadline, and now my thought is that's what happened. And then your feeling would be anger or frustration or just feeling overwhelmed by now the work lands on you. And then what's that behavior? In that moment, it could be anything from avoidance. You could result to substance abuse, overeating, or getting so engrossed in what you're doing that you forget to eat, you forget your basic foundational needs. So really kind of connecting that mind and body and understanding that when you have a thought, there's always a feeling connected to it, and that feeling then drives our behavior. And please stop me if you have any questions, or if there's anything in the chat, just let me know. So some common stress management techniques. A basic, very foundational one that we hear a lot is just take some time out. And I am 100% guilty of this. I think perhaps many of us struggle somewhere on that ADHD, that attention deficit spectrum, where we try to do too much. And a lot of that as a caregiver, we feel like we have no choice but to multitask. There's so much being asked of us all at once. And so a really, really simple one is to just pause. And I gave that example of an email or a deadline. And we work a lot with email. I don't know if any of you have received an email, and as you're reading it, you're reading the tone, you're putting that tone to text, you're doing that mind reading, you're assuming their intentions, and you start feeling those shoulders go up and you just want to respond. But instead, you pause. You take some time out and you step away before you do that. And that's just one sort of extreme example, but there are many other times where a simple pause, a breath in and out, and then resuming can make such a difference. So a simple timeout is a great strategy. Now, a shameless plug. I actually just started I'm a first year PhD student, and my area of research is nature-based wellness. My area of focus is educators, public educators, but we know that everyone is giving more than what they really should right now, and our caregivers are no exception to that. But there's a lot of neuroscience and research especially over the last decade, in the impact of being able to access green and blue spaces, which are woods, gardens, trails, parks, and then blue spaces are like ponds, rivers, the ocean. We're fortunate to live so close to a coastline. And just simply being in that presence has implications for mental wellness. There have been a lot of studies. Unfortunately, a lot of them longitudinally happened abroad, but it's a growing field of research. And there's I did a kind of a shameless plug for some of our resources before within Extension, but this is my super shameless one. I just wrote a blog about seasonal affective disorder and just how the limitation of light in the winter here in New England can really impact your mood. And there's a lot of science about just even opening curtains. If you have access to a window in your daily space, even just having the vitamin D through the window has implications for mental wellness. Taking pauses if you work remotely, or even if you work in an office where you can have the ability to step outside, to just step outside and take some of those deep breaths that we talked about. Do, some square breathing, even for 2 minutes, has an impact on our mental wellness. So just getting outside. It could just be to stand, but then obviously we want to encourage movement. So even just a quick walk around the building. I heard one of my colleagues saying, "Why do I live in a place where the wind hurts my face?" Or just being outside hurts my face. And it's like, yes, but even doing that and then being able to resume it, you can feel your cortisol levels drop. And again, there's a lot of emerging research around the impact of that. Another simple strategy is to phone a friend. And I would encourage, if you would like to, in the chat, this can be, you can name the person or just like the role they have in your life, like your childhood best friend. It could be that one colleague that I worked in the schools for 14 years. I knew the classroom I could go down to if I just needed a minute. Actually, I had coffee with her this morning. She's retired now, but and she was just my person. She was the person I could go to if I got that, that email from someone and needed to pause and just take a break and check in with someone. Maybe it's a therapist, maybe it's a counselor, maybe, like I said, it's a former colleague, a sibling, a parent, but check in with someone, being able to verbalize, or if you're not a big verbalizer, sending an email. Maybe you can articulate your thoughts and feelings better in email. Just any way to reach out and ask for help. Another great strategy is to create, whether that's with your hands doing something with crafting or artistically with paint. I would sit next to my colleagues in meetings and just probably pay more attention to them knitting or crocheting than I actually was the whole presentation. Don't tell my former leadership that, but I was just in awe of like the ability to focus on something like that, but to be able to channel what you're feeling into something can be really impactful. My husband is like a grade A putterer, as we say, but that's because he's not a great articulator, and his sort of language is through doing. So being able to have that outlet to create. This would be another great example. If you would like to, in the chat, what are some of those things that you do? Maybe you're one of those knitters that I would just sit and like gawk at through the meetings, or maybe, this time of year, some of my colleagues were talking about activities within their communities like wreath making. And, and when you reach out into your community to create, you're also building those connections, which we talked about just a couple of slides ago, about building that sort of library of resources for when you need a shoulder, or you just need a quick check-in. So creating. And then Time management. The biggest one is be realistic. You can't do it all. And even though we are inundated all at once sometimes and being asked to do it all, it's not fair. It's not realistic. And so to set reasonable expectations for yourself, to close your email. This one I struggle with myself. But if you have a mobile device, to be able to turn off your notifications. I have a teen and a tween, and my son wears a watch where his notifications make his watch go off, and just like even being in proximity to his constant vibration, it makes me feel anxious. I feel my cortisol levels going up. So disabling those notifications just to give you some respite from the constant inundation with needs. As we mentioned before, taking breaks. It could just be a brief pause. It could be a quick check-in with a friend over, like, I don't know if you use Google platforms like Google Chats, just to be like, hey, I just need a minute. How are you doing today? Stepping outside for a minute, letting the wind hurt your face. No, but getting some of that vitamin D. And then the other one, as I've kind of touched upon, is to avoid multitasking. It is so hard, and I'm guilty of it too. We all are, because technology is like that. Just like stress, there are positive and negative impacts that it's had on our lives. It's opened up so many channels. I live 12 hours away from where I grew up and where my mom still lives. And it's enabled me to keep in touch with her, see her, which still just blows my mind, FaceTime. And at the same time, now there are expectations to do all of those things and be present. So to really try and limit what your expectations are, going back to that first one, be realistic and be kind to yourself. And then again, just reflecting on your time, not just what is realistically expected of you, but to reflect on what you were able to do that day and to give yourself grace. So some mindful practices, I don't know if you're familiar with them. And again, this is another moment where I would encourage you to put them in the chat. Feel free to just kind of have a dialogue going in there too and share them. If you're familiar, like there are things like the box breathing that we shared at the very beginning, to mindful walking, even when you go outside for those short outdoor breaks, being able to notice light this time of year, being able to notice sun on different parts of the outdoors. It could be the reflection in the mica in the ground. It could be, just noticing just the contrast, the shadows with the trees make, or the building, if you're in a parking lot. It seems so fundamental, but they're the things when our brain is operating again in that heightened state, or even not, if your amygdala hasn't been hijacked, but you're still just doing that mental checklist to kind of pause and come into that moment. And we'll talk about being present in a few slides here, but mindful practices, breathing, and other things that sometimes when we say mindful, people think yoga. I'm not expecting anyone to do stretches tonight, though by all means, that is a form of mindfulness for sure. So one of the activities that I love doing, because it's just so accessible, using your hand, is this is called a grounding exercise. So to your comfort, if you want to have your camera off for this, we're just going to take a couple of minutes to do a grounding exercise. So using your hand, starting with your thumb, you're going to take some time to just take in your surroundings, look around, do a couple of cleansing breaths. And a cleansing breath, I should back up for a minute, is breathing in through your nose and exhaling through your mouth. And really focusing on your stomach. So if you're breathing through your lungs, which we all do, obviously our lungs are pretty important when we think about oxygen intake. But really kind of bringing the breath deeper into you and going into your gut. So trying to fill your belly. When we think about babies, we think about those like adorable bellies that they just so proudly have. And as we get older, we're like, well, suck it in and hold it in. And I don't know how we got there, but it's not healthy for us. And so really trying to fill that breath as if you're a happy little baby. And then again, in through your nose and out through your mouth. And so those are kind of an example of some ground cleansing breaths. So a grounding after you've done that is starting with your thumb. You're going to look around your room and name 5 things you see. So take a couple seconds to do that. It can be anything. So once you've done that, we're going to go to our finger and we're going to name 4 things that you can hear. And it can be anything. I can hear the hum of our heater running on the outside of our house. My kids talking in the other room. So take a couple of seconds to do that. We're going to name now, going to our next finger here, 3 things that you can touch, so physically right in front of you. For me, that's my pencil, my desk. Our next finger, we're going to name 2 things that you can smell. Maybe it's that that meal that's cooking in the background, hopefully by someone else, so you can be here. And then lastly, your last sense is taste. Maybe it's that delicious meal you just had. In my case, it's toothpaste. So that's a really quick, accessible grounding exercise, especially when we think about those quick pauses, or if you're noticing yourself getting really detached from this present moment, to just bring yourself back down because you're essentially floating away with your thoughts. So the idea of grounding is to really feel yourself in this moment. Now, when we think about mindfulness, I'm guilty of this too. I'm sometimes the worst student for what I teach because I feel like I should have mastered it all now. You know, I should have the ability to be able to practice this seamlessly and be able to access those things even when I'm in a heightened state. But that's not mindfulness. Mindfulness is understanding the current space that you're in this moment and what you're able to do in this moment and providing yourself grace and practice is a part of that. Again, going back to that lovely phrase of self-care, self-care, self-care. I'll be completely honest, in my 14th year working in the public schools, that was when we were kind of shifting more towards social emotional wellness, thank goodness. But everyone was throwing around self-care. What do you do for self-care? And it's like we loved that phrase, but we didn't really practice it. And that was seen on everything from daily habits, both personal and professional, to policies in the workplace that didn't reflect self-care. So really thinking about the things that you currently do that are for you, that are nurturing your wellness, as well as the barriers that you experience both personally and professionally. Maybe the person you're caring for, their demands are so high that you've really gotten lost in the equation and you're unable to practice that self-care because you've put the care of others first, which is incredibly common. But we have to think about it like if you've been on an airplane ride, I'm sure many of you have heard the example that you need to apply your oxygen mask first before you apply anyone else's. Pretty basic thinking there, because if you're not breathing, you're not going to be able to help anyone else around you. And I do love this quote, self-care is the least selfish thing you can do. So it's a bit of a mind shift there. Part of self-care is learning to say no. And again, I encourage chat throughout. What are some things that you find really difficult to say no to? For me, it's my kids. It's knowing when I can say, no, that's not reasonable because guilt drives a lot of my decisions with my kids, as their primary caregiver. You want them to be happy. You want them to perhaps have it easier than you feel you had. And so it's so easy to slip into the habit of yes, yes, yes. And one of my colleagues had gave me this silly mug of this like 50s wife, holding a tray, and she was smiling, kind of kind of like empty looking, and it said, stop me before I volunteer again. Because it's just so simple to be kind of slip into that martyr thinking of if I don't, then it won't. So learning to say no and where you can say no, and then the practice of actually doing it. And that kind of goes hand in hand with setting those boundaries. And sometimes with our loved ones and the ones that depend on us the most, it's the hardest to do. Maybe with some that annoy us, or those angry emails you get, that I referenced earlier, it's maybe a little easier to professionally push back and say things, articulate your feelings and your needs. But when it comes to our loved ones, it's really difficult. But really sticking to your I statements with them, I feel this when you, because you're owning in that moment how their actions are making you feel. And it doesn't have to be contentious. My daughter wanted to tell me something as I was preparing for this presentation. She was on her way out to dance, and she was like, "What if I ask the dance teacher this?" And I was like, "Babe, I love you. I can't do this right now. Can we connect later?" And she was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah,
Burden on people who are
yeah." Pardon me? Oh, I didn't know if someone said something. Um, so yeah, actively practicing boundaries. Um, and then my screen is blocked there. I can't remember what I put in here. Oh, focus on what you can control. Sorry, the little exit tab is literally right where my words are. So focusing on what you control. If you're not familiar with Mel Robbins, she's kind of like in the mainstream right now for the let them theory. Let them think this, let them be this way, let the people that maybe are asking too much of us in our lives, let them do or feel or think what they can, because you can't control it. And perhaps wrapping your head around that is one of the most difficult things to do as a caregiver. If you're not familiar with Brene Brown, shame on you. No, no, Brene Brown is a researcher and educator. And she's done a lot on empathy. A lot of her work has been around empathy and how that lends itself to self-care. And I do love this quote, like, talk to yourself the way you would talk to someone you love. And I know I am very guilty of not doing that. And so if again you feel comfortable, by all means, share in the chat. What are some things that you say to your friends? That maybe you need to hear too. We're the first ones to be overly critical of ourselves, and to judge our actions so harshly and even our thoughts. And we would never treat the ones that we care about, and the ones that we're taking care of that way. So kind of just being able to shift how we look at things and how we treat ourselves. And then focusing on the positive. This is another really tricky one, especially this time of year when the demands are really at their peak. Being able to, get that ugly email, or maybe you got stuck behind the slow car on the way in this morning, or it made you late to your dentist appointment and then they wanted to reschedule you. There's so many easy opportunities to think about the negative. But maybe as you were walking in, someone held the door for you. Something as simple as that, just being able to recognize the impact that can have on your mental health. So really trying to focus, sift through the bad to try and find that one little nugget of good. And again, there's a lot of research around being able to focus on that positivity. Remembering your why. Why are you doing what you're doing? why are you showing up? Why did you get into this work? Or why, what were the reasons you are in this caregiving role? Kind of going back to those basics. And a lot of times in doing that, you can kind of reignite that passion, or just understand your purpose in that moment. Being present. Um, I'm guilty of it too, especially over Zoom. You've got the other tabs open. Maybe you're Christmas shopping. Maybe you're paying a bill. It's so hard to stay present, but I hope that maybe some of those strategies can help. And when you are staring at your screen a lot, because the demands of this century are asking that of us, a great rule, if you're not familiar with it, is the 20-20-20. So for every 20 minutes you're looking at a screen, you look up and away from your screen 20 feet away for 20 seconds. So for every 20 minutes you're on your screen, you pause, look 20 feet in the distance for at least 20 seconds. And it's just one of those resets that is really good for both visual function, cognitive function, and then just general mental wellness. And then that perspective shifting, kind of like what we were talking about just a couple seconds ago about focusing on the positive versus the negative things that happen to us on a daily basis. I love this little cartoon. You know, it's easy also to when we are those caretakers to compare. Maybe you're thinking, oh, well, who am I to compare or to complain when someone else has enter whatever you think is worse than what you have. But it's also really important to validate where you're at right now and to give yourself that grace. So practicing gratitude, again, you can notice that a lot of these blend, right, and they just dovetail, and might seem redundant, but they are actually all very different mindfulness techniques if you really dove into it, which we're not doing tonight. But some simple gratitude. For me, I think Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I've got food, I've got shelter, I've got love, and especially with some of the, financial needs and prices of things right now, I don't overlook that. My basic needs are being met. I have a job that I enjoy. It challenges me. Having family and friends that I can reach out to. Um, I had a back surgery a few years ago and I was really limited in what I could do, and it was a really hard thing to overcome. So it's not missed on me, my mobility and my accessibility to be able to participate in the things that really impact my mental health or improve my mental health. And being able to be with my immediate family over the holidays. I would love, love, love just to take a minute and have everyone, if you would like to participate, what are some of the things that you're feeling gratitude for? And it doesn't have to be broad. It can be right now in this moment. Like maybe you got a great cup of tea. Maybe someone really is making dinner for you right now. Um, maybe you've got some really great slippers on and your feet are warm. Really, really simple things. What are you feeling grateful for in this moment? Take us a couple seconds to think about that. So again, that the ability to practice altruism, being able to be kind to others, it might feel somewhat ironic as this is a workshop intended to really address caretaker needs. And here where I'm asking you to really give more kindness to others, but there's a lot of research around altruism and just the practice of putting kindness out there and how that fills buckets mentally, for yourself. And kind of going back to that email, when you pause, maybe even give it 24 hours before you respond. Very rarely am I upset with myself when I give it time and I respond with kindness instead of sometimes what is in my immediate thoughts. I don't ever look back and think, man, I'm mad I waited and responded kindly to them. So really just holding space for the thinking that hurt people hurt other people. And a lot of people are hurting right now, and just kind of being able to practice that kindness. Limit social media. This is a tough one. There's ways on your phone, if you're not familiar, you can check your screen time, and it tracks everything from, your social media apps, or what they consider social, to what they consider the magic phone people, what is considered productivity. But you can track that. Social media is very provocative. It's a very difficult thing to step away from, because sometimes you're getting your news or you're getting your community from there. So not asking to quit entirely, but just to be mindful of how it makes you feel, both when you are engaging in it online and when you remove yourself from it and step back. Do you feel like that was bucket filling, or was that more time sucking? And I definitely have reached that point where it became more time sucking, when all of a sudden I'm watching carpets be power washed. I'm like, what is happening? Why am I watching this? It's so soothing and I can't stop, and I just keep swiping. That's taking more away from me than it's giving me. So just being mindful of your social media use. Again, it can lead to a lot of problematic feelings, which can lead to some maladaptive behavior. So we're not going to go through some of these, but I wanted to list some of them. Grounding moments, we talked about that before. A shorter way to do it, I like the hand, because it's an easy way to remember your five senses, and you've got it right here, boom, 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 boom. But if you just do the 3-2-1, three things you hear, two things you see, one thing you feel. Another really quick grounding one is to find a color of something in your room, or pick a color, and then you identify all the objects in your room that are that color. I have a red mug right here. There Nice. But even if you don't have accessibility to flame, which we did not in the schools, um, we would have those little tea lights, those electric tea lights, and they make color changing ones that will go through like the spectrum of colors. And even that is a really great mindfulness activity. Even just staring out your window, we had some freezing rain on where I live on this side of the state last night. I don't like that, but on rainy days, or even on the car drives, my kids are like, "Oh, I'm so bored," or I'll just find them like, staring out the window. And I was like, believe it or not, you're doing mindfulness. And they're like, oh. But just being able to focus on one thing is really the objective of a grounding exercise. Another example is journaling. I'm not great at practicing it on a daily basis, but if, again, using your device, mine is an Apple device, and it has a notes. I'm sure Android has something similar. And sometimes I'll just put my thoughts in there. It can be sporadic, or it can be a daily practice. It could be something that you implement on a daily basis. Your happiness folder. Maybe these are the cards that you've received, or the pictures that your kids or friends that have shared with you, tucking them away in one place. So when you are feeling the weight of the world, sometimes you can open that up and be reminded that you are loved, you are thought about, you are cared for, and it just brings you joy. And again, another opportunity to share in the chat, what's something, if you were to have, if you already have a happiness folder, what are some of those things that you have in there? You don't have to share anything personal, but when I was a counselor, I had a lot of drawings from kids. I used to love when they would give me drawings, because sometimes I felt like that said more than what they would share with me in a session. And I would tuck those away. They would give me school pictures, or little fidgets sometimes, and it just it brought me back to that why. Why am I here? Why am I doing this work? And then how do you start? You just start. You just pick one of these things that we talked about today, and you just try it. You just try it for one day. It can be one of the mindfulness practices. It could be signing up for one of those wreath making workshops within your community. It could be picking up the phone and calling a friend. All of that is taking time for yourself and practicing self-care. It can be that basic. So you just have to do it. And I feel like I'm not getting paid by Mel Robbins, but I just finished reading her book, and her 5 4 3 2 1. It's like it's so easy to hit that snooze button in the morning she talked about, which really resonated with me. She's like, what does that extra 8 minutes give you other than now you've got less time to start your morning? So she talks about 5 4 3 2 1, get up and do the difficult thing. So I challenge you for the 5 4 3 2 1 to try and integrate one of these things we talked about today into your daily practice because you are worth it. That buddy system, if you have a friend or a loved one, that accountability, um, even my son is an athlete and he likes to go to the gym and guess who needs to drive him to the gym? So even I don't know if he would really like the term buddy system, but he is my gym buddy, and there's that accountability to really get out and take care of yourself. So maybe you have a friend at lunch or a colleague at lunch that you say, hey, let's go take a quick walk around the building. That accountability really has an impact on your probability of participating in any one of these activities. You're someone who needs like a rubric or a graph, a visual to be able to map out some strategies to just get started. These are some great templates that I can share, perhaps with Ashley or someone that you could access to kind of guide you on taking your first few steps towards this. And then an I am poem. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but it's another great thing that even if you just toss it in the notes on your phone, to just every once in a while revisit it, take some time, maybe go sit in a quiet place. You could have your candle, maybe a warm beverage, and to just reflect. And then you have that could be part of your happiness folder. You can go back to that, or it could be part of your grounding moment to really kind of become like a mantra, a part of this. If you're not familiar with the I am poems, challenge yourself. I'm really talking a lot about my phone, which kind of seems counterintuitive, but I love the times puzzles. I've even gotten my kids into the strands, and it's just a quick way to engage. And then my mom, who's 75 and lives 12 hours away, we send each other the Wordle to keep that brain engaged. Do something to challenge yourself. Maybe it is that walk around the building. Maybe it is stepping outside. Maybe it's even just opening the curtains, because sometimes it just feels like too much to let the light in. I challenge you to challenge yourself in one sliver of your day. And then just mindful moments. Be patient with yourself. Remember, we are not robots. We make the joke a lot with my family that, those click on all the stoplights or motorcycles and the type A personality in our family are like, is that corner in there? I don't know. We're not robots, So just remembering that we can't do it all, even though all of it is being asked of us. Again, having acceptance and giving yourself grace. It's very real to hit that wall. You're going to have days where you want to throw in the towel and really just question everything. Why am I doing all of this? And just know that everyone, literally everyone, has those days. But when it starts becoming a pattern, when you're noticing it happening more than a week, it becomes 2 weeks. Then we start noticing a pattern of thought and behavior. And that's where we really need to get some support. But everyone will have a day where we just are wiped. And it's okay to not be okay. And lastly, I put together a book list that I can share, and I love podcasts. So I have a podcast list of just some science-based wellness podcasts and literature of just resources. And that's all I have. Thank you for participating. Oh, I can see the chat now. Well, Well, thank you all so much for participating. Oh, yes, I did see the Australia social media ban. Doesn't sound like they're very happy about it, the kids, but I think it's great.
Thank
Oh,
you.
oh yeah, I can put some of those links too in the chat. I'll do that right now before everyone hops off if you'd like those lists.
Thank you so much. We can also, we send follow-up emails to everyone who registered, and we can make sure to include those links there
Oh,
so
great.
that people can have access to them anytime.
Great. This one in here too. And this is the podcast list. Ooh. That's weird. Hmm. Okay. Great.
Wonderful. Yeah.
So
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
everyone for joining us. And thank you, Kristen, for the amazing resources and different skills and techniques that folks can use. We truly appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining.